Good morning, children. As it was decided on Saturday that we have, after finishing the syllabus, we'll start up with the revision work. As you all said that we want to revise, so I would like to revise whatever we have done once more, and that is going to benefit you a lot because next month you have your UT2 also, and after that you have your final exam. So maybe after revising the syllabus of UT2, we will take up the deleted portion so that you come to know what is there in the most important deleted chapter CBSE has deleted. That also will take time. So what I thought that for revising, uh, when I asked for your opinion, you people, I couldn't get any message regarding the chapter, that which chapter needs to be started. So today, for the time being, I want to start with the chapter Cell, the Unit of Life. If you have any other choice that you want to start with that chapter or you want to revise that chapter, you can let me know by the evening, and then I'll take up that chapter, whichever chapter you want to revise. We have that WhatsApp group, and in that group you can send the message that ma'am, please start with this chapter, uh, revising this chapter. So I'll start with that. Right now I'm getting a message micro biomolecules, but I didn't say right now I'll start with the chapter Cell. And in the message you can, in the WhatsApp group you can send me messages that ma'am, from tomorrow please start revising this chapter. So on the basis of the majority of the student, they say whichever chapter, I'll start with that tomorrow. So just now I got a choice from Amrita, and she's saying biomolecules. If you are okay with that, then you all also send me the message that you want to start. um, okay, I'm getting a message from Sanvi Rana to add her in the group, but you are already there in the group. Sanvi Rana, you are already there in the group, so there's no need to add you in the group. You are already there. Okay, so children, you just let me know which particular chapter you want to start tomorrow. And because I was waiting since yesterday also, I was waiting. Saturday also I was waiting, though I got the message that please start with the revision work, but were not mentioned. So I thought that the unit of life is the unit of cell. So today I'll start with this chapter, and then maybe tomorrow, whatever portion of this chapter I'll be able to teach you today, I'll teach that. And tomorrow, on the basis of your voting, I'll start with that chapter. So let's start with the chapter Cell, the Unit of Life. The chapter is Cell, the Unit of Life. Now, what is cell and why this is known as unit of life? See, when we say what is cell, cell is the structural and functional unit of life. This is what we know about cell. Structural and functional unit of life. Along with this, we also say that the cell is the building block of the body. It is the building block of the body. So both are correct. And we have to include both the sentences in what we write, what is cell. So this is, the cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Even if it is a multicellular organism, where does all the functions take place? All the functions takes place in a cell. Then way all the cells, they work together. work together, they make a tissue, then or cellular the in the cell. Now, structural means structural unit of life means the one by one. See, many cells together they make up the body of an organism. So it is the structural unit of life also. If it is a unicellular organism, one cell makes the body of the organism. If it is a multicellular organism, many cells together they make an organism. Now, now children, let's start with the person who first observed the cell. It was Robert Hooke. It was Robert Hooke, the researcher, who first observed the cell, and he observed the cell in the dead tissue, bark of a tree, bark of a tree. Which tree? Cinchona tree. Okay, so bark is the dead tissue. As you dead tissue means what he and it was a cinchona tree. When he took the bark of a tree and took a thin slice of that bark and observed it under the microscope, what did he observe? He observed that there were many cells like this, honeycomb like structure. What did he observe? It was honeycomb like. So then he observed that bark is a dead tissue. It is a dead tissue. So he was the first one to observe a dead tissue. Dead tissue. Now, when he observed, what he could see, because it was a dead cell, because it was a dead tissue, what did he observe? That there were only walls like that, only walls, and inside nothing was there. It was only wall and nothing was there. Only wall was there and nothing was inside. So inside it was empty. And to him, what it appeared that all around there is wall and in the center there is space. All around there is wall, in the center there is space. Around wall, in the center there is space. So it looked like a cell. You know what is cell? Cell is prison. See, when the prisoners are kept, they are kept in small rooms which have long walls and a small area where their bed is kept and a little space is there. So that particular room is known as a cell. So he observed it and it came to his mind that it resembles a prison, a small cell, a small room with walls. So he called it cell because it was empty, small room. It was like empty small room, which is a prison, which is like a prison. So he called it cell because inside no cytoplasm was there, no cytoplasm, no nucleus, no organelles, no cytoplasm, no nucleus, no organelles, nothing was inside. Nothing cell because it resembled a prison. And Robert Hooke called it a cell and from call it a cell. And till now we use the same word to describe a cell. We call it a cell. The unit of a living body we call a cell from then. See, Robert Hooke called cell some to a dead cell where only walls were there. There was no cytoplasm, no nucleus, no organelles, nothing was there inside. It was a cavity inside. He called it a cell, and still we are calling a cell. Every cell a cell. Then Anton von Leeuwenhoek was the one who first saw and described a living cell. Then there was Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Anton von Leeuwenhoek. He was the first one to describe to observe and describe a living cell. And where did he see it and describe it? He took the water from a pond and then he observed it. There he could see the unicellular organism which he described as living cell. So Anton von Leeuwenhoek was the first one to observe and describe a living cell. Then after this, one more researcher who did a lot of work on it, he was Robert Brown. Robert Brown. This researcher, Robert Brown, was the first one to discover nucleus. He was the one who first discovered the nucleus, and he said that this is the nucleus, this is the brain of the cell, this controls all the working, all the functions of a cell, and this is also known as the brain of the cell. This is what he said, and he was the first one to describe it. Then slowly the cell was observed. How do they look like? How they form the building block of the body and everything. It was observed about the cell. And after this, there were two researchers who came into existence, and their was Schleiden. He was German botanist, British zoologist. So Schleiden and Schramm, M. Schleiden and T. Schramm. These two researchers, they observed the cell, and on the basis of that, they gave the cell theory. They gave the cell theory. On the basis of that, they observed the cell and gave the cell theory. There are three postulates of cell theory, okay, which they gave by observing the functioning of the cell, by observing the structure of the cell. And the cell theory, it has three postulates. There are three postulates of the cell theory. And what are those postulates that I'm going to tell you now? And after this, first they gave these three postulates, 1, 2, and 3. Then later on, there was Rudolf Virchow. There was another researcher, Rudolf Virchow, who added something to this existing theory. His name was Rudolf Virchow. Virchow. He added to the existing cell theory. Added to existing cell theory. So he added some points to existing cell theory. It was Rudolf Virchow. So now I'll tell you what are the three postulates of cell theory. This I'm going to tell you now. So the postulates of cell theory, which was given by Schleiden and Schwann. The postulates of cell theory, which was given by Schleiden and Schwann. The postulates of cell theory are, number 1, all the organisms are made up of small units which are known as cell. All the organisms this was the first postulate. The second postulate was cell functional unit of life. Cell is the structural and functional unit of life. And in the third postulate, he told what is a cell. Cell is a mass of cytoplasm which is enclosed by membrane, and all the organelles lie on the cytoplasm. Cell is a mass of cytoplasm on which all the organelles lie. All the organelles lie and is enclosed by a membrane. So these were the three postulates which were given by Schleiden and Schwann, and then the person who joined them was Rudolf Virchow, and he said omnis cellula e cellula. Then the person who joined them was Rudolf Virchow, and he said omnis cellula e cellula. Omnis cellula e cellula. This is what he said. By this, he meant, this was the language Latin in which he said, and by this he meant that all the cells arise from pre-existing cells. All the cells arise from pre-existing cells. By this he meant that, by this what did he mean? By this he meant that when we see a cell, from where does it come? From where a cell comes? A cell arises from a pre-existing cell. Suppose this is a cell. Okay, now this cell divides into two, forms two cells. Now from where this cell has come? From pre-existing cell. Now this also divides into two, this also divides into two. Okay, now if we see that four cells formed, if we talk about the cell A, B, C, D, the C cell, from where it has come? It has come from the pre-existing cell. Now if we say it 1 and 2, from where this 2 cell has come? This has come from the pre-existing cell. Some cell which was existing before, from those pre-existing cells, when the pre-existing cells divide, the new cells, they come into existence, they arise. This is what Rudolf Virchow wanted to see. And this way the cell theory was formed and it was given. Now, when we see a cell, the cell is of different shapes and different size. And first of all, I'll tell you, why do we say that structural and functional unit of life? We say structural and functional unit of life because whether it is a multicellular or a unicellular or multicellular, whether it is a unicellular or multicellular organism, functions takes place in the cell. In the cell, all the metabolic functions, all the biochemical functions, they take place in the cell. So that is why we say that it is a functional unit of life. Now, why do we say structural unit of life? Whether it is a unicellular organism or a multicellular organism, structural. That means in unicellular organism, one cell forms the entire body of the organism. And if it is a multicellular organism, here also the cells together. The cells many cells, when they join, they form tissue, and then the tissue forms organ forms organ system, and this way the complete organism is formed. So whether it is a unicellular organism or the multicellular organism, the cell is the structural and functional unit of life. This is what he wanted to see. Now, if you see cells, some overview of cell now I'll tell you. What is the size of the cell, whether how small a cell is, what type of organism on the basis of the type of the nucleus or on the basis of the number of the cells which are present in them. That also I'll tell you just now. So here, if we see the smallest cell and the largest cell, smallest cell. The smallest cell is known to be PPLO, which is also known as mycoplasm. The full form of PPLO is pleuropneumonia-like organism. Pneumonia-like organism. Now, beta, if we see, this is a virus. This is not a bacteria. This is a virus, and this is, because it is a virus, it is without cell wall. It is without cell wall. So if we want to say the smallest cell which is without cell wall, that is PPLO. But smallest cell with cell wall, in bracket I'll write with cell wall, who has cell wall also. The smallest cell with cell wall. See, this is without cell wall. The top one is without cell wall, where the cell wall is absent. But I'm telling you now the smallest cell in which cell wall is present, whereas PPLO is the smallest cell in which the cell wall is absent. Now, if we talk of the largest cell is ostrich egg. Ostrich's egg. This is the largest cell. Okay. Now, the smallest cell can be 0.3 micrometer. Okay. Smallest cell can be 0.3 micrometer, and the bacteria can be 1 to 3 micrometer in length. Okay. So bacteria can be 3 to 5 micrometer. This can be 3 to 5 micrometer. 3 to 5 micrometer, and this can be about 0.3 micrometer. Okay, so this is the size, and that is why these are smallest and the largest cell. Now, there are some factors on which the size of cell is dependent. So there are some factors which determine the size of cell. Factors which determine the size of cell. There are basically three factors which determine the size of cell, and out of them the first factor is nucleocytoplasmic ratio. The first factor is nucleocytoplasmic ratio. Now, what is this nucleocytoplasmic ratio? Nucleocytoplasmic ratio is the amount of the size of the nucleus and the amount of cytoplasm present. Now, if this is the size of the nucleus and this is the size of the cell and this is the size of the nucleus. See here, if you see, the size of the cell is okay, and the size of the nucleus is also okay to govern the entire function which takes place in the cytoplasm. The nucleus is sufficient in size to govern all the functions which are taking place in the cytoplasm, because nucleus is the brain of the cell and it governs all the functions which take place in the cell. Now, if the size of the cytoplasm, the accumulation of the cytoplasm increases. So from here, before it was this much, now from this much, now it increases to this much. The cytoplasm from there has increased to this much. This was initial accumulation of cytoplasm, and this is the final accumulation of the cytoplasm. Now, for this much size, for this much accumulation of cytoplasm, this size of nucleus was sufficient. But if the accumulation of cytoplasm increases, that means the amount of cytoplasm, the size of the cell is increasing, but the size of the nucleus is not increasing. It remains the same. So this size of nucleus, it will be difficult for this size of nucleus to control the entire function of the cell. So this is very important, that a particular nucleocytoplasmic ratio needs to be maintained. That means the size of the nucleus and the accumulation of cytoplasm needs to be balanced, so that the size of nucleus, or the nucleus, can properly control, can properly manage all the functions which are taking place in the cytoplasm. This is known as nucleocytoplasmic ratio. So it has to be very proper. The second point which determines the size of the cell, the second factor which determines the size of the cell, that is the surface area and volume ratio. Surface area and volume ratio, the second factor. Surface area and volume ratio. This is the second factor. Now, for this factor, suppose we consider a cell to be a cube. So we are considering a cell to be a cube. Suppose here, this is a cell. We are considering the cell to be a cube, and each surface of the cube, this surface, this lower, this upper, bottom, all the surface, let's take them to be 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter. So we are taking them as 1 centimeter, all the surfaces. Now, if we take the area of this, so area comes to be, area of this cell comes to be L sides. How many sides are there? So when we consider the length and the breadth, it comes to be 1 into 1, 1 into 1, and there are 6 sides. So it comes to be 6. This is the area of the surface area. This has come. And the volume, it comes to be, volume is L into B into H. So it comes to be 1 into 1 into 1. So it's come to be 1. So now if we see area and volume ratio, area volume ratio, if we see, it comes to be 6:1 when the area was 1 centimeter. Now if we increase, the cell increases in size and the area doubles. Suppose it becomes 2 centimeters. After the growth, the area doubles. It becomes 2 centimeter. Now in that case, what will happen? The area will come to be 2 into 2 into 6, 24. And the volume will be 2 into 2 into 2, 8. The volume is 8 and this is 24. Now if we cancel it, it comes to be 8 3s are 24. Final readings comes to be 3. Now if we take area volume ratio, it comes to be 3 is to, no, 24 is to 3. Let's take it, don't take it like this. 24 is to 3. This is what we get. And if we cancel it, it comes to be 8 is to 1. So when the area increased, the surface area and volume ratio has, no, it won't be this, it will be 8. 3 8 24. Yes. No, this is 8. Just a minute. This is 8. So it comes to be 8, 3 is 24, 3 is to 1. So it has come 3 is to 1. It is 8, so 24 is to 8, so it comes to be 3 is to 1, and it is 6 is to 1. So we have seen that when the area increased, the surface area and volume ratio has decreased. When the area, when the size was less, it was about 1 centimeter, and in that case the area and volume ratio was 6 to 1. But when the growth took place and the measurements increased from 1, it became 2, so it was 3 to 1. That means when the growth increases, the surface area volume ratio decreases. This is the second factor which is going to determine the size of the cell. Then the third is the rate of metabolism.